Good morning. Welcome to the program Agenda, your program, your agenda, and it is a platform for many topics, many agendas that aren't getting the right amount of exposure, but affects our everyday life. So do stay with us today because we are going to have a very interesting interview, something that doesn't happen every day, but it's going to be interesting. I don't know if I should be telling you, but I will be interrogating a former FBI agent. I'm just sweetening the pie or the coffee, as they say. But actually, our topic for today will be about security, safety, and all that covers terrorism, cyber crimes, etc. We will be discussing that with an expert who is based on the length of his stay in the Philippines, is probably Pinoy already, American Filipino. But we'll get to that later. In the meantime, welcome to the program. It is September 27, 2023. It's a Wednesday. I do hope and pray you're all well, feeling good, optimistic, and looking forward to the day. And thank you for being Cignal TV subscribers and watching us on One News channels 8 and 250. Thank you also to those of you who catch us on Facebook and on YouTube because of time differences, location, as well as, of course, schedules. And maraming salamat to those who watch us on the Cignal Play app. And thank you to PLDT for their home fiber optic internet. Now, we will be talking to that specialist in a while. But first, let's go to our daily starter. And our daily starter is very interesting. From the English writer and essayist Sam Johnson, the chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. Okay. Now, you might be saying, lalim naman yan, Cito. That seems so profound, but not easy to understand. It's simple, very simple. Habits happens in the repetition of things, like the habit of cursing, the habit of smoking, or the habit of saving. Habits can both be bad or good. Now, many people will say, oh, I only smoke one stick a day. Oh, I only drink one shot of whiskey a week. Or I only have a glass of wine every now and then. Or no, I was just speeding today because I'm in a hurry. And we don't think much of it until one day somebody calls your attention. Hey, buddy, I notice you've constantly been speeding, breaking the speed limit. Hey, sweetie, your mouth has beginning to turn into a sewer because of all the bad words or the nasty words you're saying, etc. And we only come to terms with it at the point when it's already hard to break or causes tension. So be careful about the habits you form. Good habits, great. A good habit of saving, of being an encourager, of being someone who helps people and helps at home, that's a good habit. But the bad habits, as Sam Johnson said, you don't notice until they become a burden or they start choking your wrist or your lifestyle. Okay, so that's our daily starter. Please think seriously about this, especially if someone has pointed it out to you. Now, let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star, September 27, 2023. The headline is Philippines eyes restitution from China before international tribunal. the government is considering seeking compensation from China for its increasing number of transgressions in the West Philippine Sea, the latest of which were its plunder of corals in Rosul Reef and its installation of floating barriers in Panatag Shoal. So the Office of the Solicitor General is currently studying their options. At the top of the front page, the header, which has become which has caused quite a stir, former PNP chief Azurin held by Canadian immigration over abuses under Duterte. Former Philippine National Police Chief General Rodolfo Azurin was reportedly questioned by immigration authorities upon his arrival at the Langley Airport in Canada about the drug war of former President Rodrigo Duterte. Okay, authorities were reportedly interested to know the details about the Duterte drug war and even asked Azurin about incumbent senators allied with the previous administration. And contrary to reports, the same sources said that Azurin was not deported but opted to take a flight back to the Philippines to avoid further harassment by immigration authorities. In other words, he either he was returned to sender or self-deportation, but General Azurin said he will clarify the issue very soon, and even said he suspects that a fellow police general was the one who tipped the Canadian immigration about his arrival and misled the Canadian immigration regarding his background. So there you go. Meanwhile, BBM off to Saudi in October. Sarap talaga. Okay. President Bongbong Marcos is expected to make another foreign trip soon, this time Saudi Arabia. The details of the trip have yet to be released. Ay, nako, glitch. Okay, on the other side of the front page, glitch hits Viber. Hacker warning out. The Cybercrime Investigation and Coordinating Center issued a public alert after glitches were discovered in messaging platform Viber, resulting in failed attempts to send video and file transfers among users. After further study, it was determined that calls and messages were getting through, but not the transfer of video and files. So they believe that it may be an operational glitch more than anything. Okay. Meanwhile, China barriers necessary to block Philippine vessel. China has defended its installation of floating barriers in Panatag Shoal, saying it was a professional, restrained action necessary to block and drive away a Philippine vessel. Okay, yun po yung sabi nila. Meanwhile, BBM tariff reduction rejects tariff reduction on rice. And that photo is of Senator Amy Marcos fist-bumping a member of a farmers group as she joined a rally yesterday at the Department of Finance main office, calling for the removal of DOF Secretary Benjamin Diokno and NEDA Director General Arsenio Balisacan for seeking a temporary reduction of tariffs on imported rice. Interesting, it's become a family affair. The Speaker of the House, the cousin of Amy, is calling for the resignation of the OTS head, and now Senator Amy calling for the removal of Jokno and Balisacan. President Marcos, meantime, rejected yesterday a proposal to temporarily cut the tariff on imported rice to lower the prices of food staple, citing projections that global prices would decrease. Okay, I hope they are not merely setting precedent so that they also don't have to suspend the excise tax on gasoline and diesel. Meanwhile, Marcos certifies Magna Carta of Filipino seafarers as urgent. Okay. President Marcos has certified as urgent a bill that seeks to strengthen seafarers' rights and improve their global competitiveness. In a letter to Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri, Marcos raised the need for the immediate passage of Senate Bill 2221. Okay, and then OTS chief. Speaking of the call of the Speaker of the House, OTS chief submits courtesy resignation because the Speaker of the House demanded it, suggested it, and threatened to block the funding of the OTS. Okay. Meanwhile, Metrobank Foundation president elevated to status of accredited in public relations. Iba ito. Metrobank Foundation Inc. President Aniceto Sobrepeña was conferred the status of accredited in public relations, or APR, by the Public Relations Society of the Philippines during the recently concluded 30th National PR Congress, not Congressman. Congratulations. That's what I wanted to say. Congratulations, Sir Sobra Peña. You have been doing such a great job there. Okay, and last but not the least, the Chamber of Thrift Banks recently held its annual convention with the theme Thrift Banks 2023, taking the lead to economic recovery through digitalization. Okay, that's all the news we have for the front page, from the front page of the Philippine Star today, and we will go for a quick break. But like I said, please stay tuned. Please watch the program because we are going to be talking about an event that's about to take place, and it's all about security, safety, addressing the needs of corporations, government, regarding future threats and current concerns. We'll be right back here on Agenda.
reports surfaced that the cyber hackers behind the PhilHealth site attack were asking for ransom money. The Department of Information and Communications Technology said the hackers were demanding $300,000 or 17 million pesos in exchange for the stolen data. PhilHealth clarified that it did not get any direct ransom demand so far, but even if that's the case, the state insurer insists it will not pay the ransom money because of government policy. As of now, PhilHealth is operating manually and working to restore its systems after being hit by the Medusa ransomware. How can PhilHealth and other government agencies protect their data from cyber hackers? Let's further discuss this and more on today's agenda.
Stephen Cutler is an international security expert who previously served as the head of the Office of Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, in the Philippines. In his 22-year career at the FBI, Cutler conducted successful investigations in organized crimes, corrupt public officials, and a variety of frauds. Now, he is the director of Guide Meridian, a local firm that helps clients use technology for efficient customer service. Cutler is also the Chief Risk and Compliance Officer for OmniPay, an e-money and payment company in the country.
Good morning, Steve. Welcome to the program agenda.
Good morning, Cito. It's good to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you for making time. I asked the team to reach out to your group because I came across a Facebook post regarding an event that's about to happen. And it caught my eye because it was talking about safety and security and all that. And not to brag, but my daughter is enrolled abroad on that very program. There is actually a curriculum on safety and security. So I was like, wow, she's on the money on this one. So apparently it's not a future career or a future concern. It's happening now. Could you share with our viewers what exactly is that event all about so that they could have a better idea?
Well, I think actually your daughter is an example of the growing concern about safety and security and how people need to prepare. And you brought up a great point. This is happening now, but then also in the future. So this event that's coming up in the next couple of days is called Protect. Just like the word, like the meaning, we protect ourselves, we protect our countries. It's been around actually since about 2005. So here we are after the pandemic, after all these major events that have happened. We have a new edition coming out this year, and I'm very, very excited about this edition. The Protect Conference will bring together industry leaders and government people, private sector people, students, a wide variety of people, several hundred actually, to talk about the issues about how we protect ourselves. The intro talked about PhilHealth. We're talking about cybersecurity, the Internet of Things, as well as physical security and international security. It's going to be a very, very exciting time.
Okay, from what I gathered, all of this started was a spin-off, if I may use the word, after 9/11. Everybody became so concerned about terrorism, about terrorist attack, etc., etc. And then the pandemic, because much of the world shifted to digital or digitalization, then it became a shift to cybersecurity, cybercrime, etc. But what are the big things or the major concerns on the horizon as far as security and safety is concerned? What are the new threats that concerns people like you, Steve?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, as they say, because this did start after 9/11. 9/11 was not just an event that struck the United States. It changed the world and the way we look at things because of the mode of attack, how they went about doing it, the international nature of that attack, where it started, where it came from, and so on. And then the fallout of that, which included the Philippines, with different groups aligning themselves with Al-Qaeda and the global reach. Now we have ISIS, or also called Daesh. So we were looking at how do we get people together in the same room? Because we were, the word that is often used is stovepiped or siloed, which means that everybody kind of had their own little niche in which they worked. And we realized that that wasn't the best way to handle things. So a local company, a company here in the Philippines, Leverage International, worked with the Anti-Terrorism Task Force, now known as the Anti-Terrorism Council, the ATC, and the National Security Council, to say, how can we bring a lot of people together? So they started in 2005, it took a couple of years, to get the Protect conference set up. We had a lot of speakers that would come in throughout the day, throughout the couple of days, and exhibitors and so on. This year is going to be a little bit different. You raised the idea of the pandemic. Well, what else is happening? Now, not only what is going on in the pandemic that we already had, and parts of which are continuing because the SARS-CoV-2 or the COVID-19 is still affecting a lot of people globally. But what else is out there? What's likely to be the next pandemic? And are we ready for the next pandemic? Also, in health-related issues, what about other chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear threats do we see happening? And is the Philippines ready for that? And what kind of steps can we take to get ready for the next event so that we don't have the massive economic and personal destruction that we saw during the last pandemic? Because frankly, nobody in the world apparently was really ready for this. And so we had to rush vaccines into production. We had massive, closed businesses. A lot of businesses never reopened.
Mm-hmm.
So people lost jobs. How do we take care of those people? If we're not going to let them go to work and make money for themselves and take care of their own families, who steps in to make sure that they can pay the rent, that they can buy the food? It's just a lot of things that nobody really thought about before. And that's what this Protect conference is intended to do. However, if I can continue, it also goes beyond that. And what we're seeing, and the pandemic brought it up, and the events of 9/11 also showed it about 20 years ago, that crime, terrorism, health issues are to a great extent borderless. We don't have the same world. We have a lot of the same problems, but we don't have the same world that we had when you and I were younger, the few years ago that was. But we now, threats can reach across borders. They don't even pay attention to borders. And so some of the things that we're looking at are, Ukraine. What does that mean for us? The internet, social media, the Internet of Things, where our refrigerators, our televisions, heating and air conditioning systems, and so on are all connected. It makes it great for us as consumers, but there are some threat issues that are coming up with this as well. Climate change. We see, especially in the ASEAN region, Indonesia has massive burning of land clearing. Well, how does that affect our weather? How does that affect our health when smoke particles get into the air? We had here in the last couple of weeks, we had fears of particulates from Taal volcano, and so on. So climate change, and then geopolitical issues, whether that be with China, the United States, Japan, India, and so on. And then what does that mean for us as we're looking ahead?
Are you going to limit that to the obvious, or are you also going to be tackling, I have been talking to people and telling them we got to put bicycles on the road. We need to have more solar, consumer solar sets, etc. And they say, Cito, you're being so simple in your approach. I said, guys, if Saudi Arabia just decides unilaterally to close the tap, where are you going to get the oil? We're already climbing the walls trying to predict where we're going to get our next shipload of rice, etc. And then we've discovered in Ukraine that it's not a simple issue of two guys butting heads and using their soldiers. There's also a third player that is a bunch of terrorists joining in, etc. So I'm like wondering, does Protect also tell people you cannot just concern yourself with what's under your nose or on your table? You have to predict what's going to happen in terms of energy, energy alternatives, food, because like Steve, food security. I've been talking and talking about how the Americans don't need to have such huge farms and silos and food silos or grain silos, but they do so because of food security and threats. And we don't have that in the Philippines. Are you going to have a special talk on that as well?
Yeah, in fact, we do. We're talking about the health threats I mentioned earlier about the chemical and radiological threats, biodefense, and so on. We'll be talking as well about the Philippine seas and their issues, cross straits. One of the things that we need to pay attention to with the maritime issues is that it's not just about our territory. It is about our territory, but it's not just about our territory. It's about our food supply, because when other nations, and we hear a lot in the news about China or whatever, this, that, or the other thing, but there's other nations that will send their ships in. And these are not just little banca boats. These are big ships, and they have smaller ships that are attached to them that will go out and just grab massive numbers of fish from our territory. Well, that means less fish for us. Unfortunately, in the food environment, it is what is called a not zero trust, but it's not a win-win situation. It's saying, if you get more, I get less. And if I get more, you get less. It has to balance out. And so the problem is that when these big countries send in their big ships and they take massive numbers of fish out of our seas, a lot of which will die. They want they want this type of fish, they want that type of fish, or whatever, but they take everything. That means that we don't have that much, and so we have to buy it from them, and that's not right, because it's our territory. So we will be talking about
which we already are doing. Every time there's that fishing ban, we're buying fish from other countries.
That's exactly right. And so those issues, but then how do we cooperate with Vietnam, Indonesia, so that which we share some maritime areas, and China, how do we actually share that so that we all can benefit from it and it doesn't go just to one country? And that's part of the issue as well. I'd like to note that one of the topics that we'll be talking about is a larger issue than just the West Philippine Sea and the South China Sea. We're going to be talking about the Indo-Pacific, so all the way over into the Indian Ocean, as well as the entire Pacific Ocean, and how that affects us as well. It's not well known, but the Philippine Nuclear Regulatory Authorities were actually able to track some of the fallout and radioactivity from the Fukushima meltdown a few years ago. It actually went all the way around the Pacific Ocean and then came back to our shores. Now, we're not going to be talking about that specifically, but we will be talking about nuclear issues. So if Indonesia or the Philippines wants to restart nuclear power, how does that affect everybody else? So I think we're going to be able to see some forward-looking ideas that, yes, what about today, but what about tomorrow and the next day and years from now, so that our children and grandchildren have a safe world in which that they can prosper live and to prosper.
Okay. I'm not sure if you're directly involved in the program planning. I do hope you are.
Yeah.
But could you possibly take us through the two-day event and the topics and who would be the speakers one by one? And let's talk about them briefly so people would have an idea. Oh, hey, I want to go there. I want to watch that, because I understand you'll have a special session on current concerns and how future proofing business corporations regarding security. But on the first day, what's happening on the first day, which is tomorrow?
Well, yes, and so if you'll pardon me while I kind of read this so I can get my notes.
Sure.
The keynote speaker will be the National Security Advisor, Eduardo Año, and he's going to give us, as a keynote, he'll give us a big picture, what kind of things they see from that very, what I call the 50,000-foot view. And then he'll be followed by Professor Rohan Gunaratna. Rohan has been around for a number of years in the Philippines and elsewhere. He actually is a professor at the School of International Studies in Singapore. He's written a number of books on terrorism, including the Abu Sayyaf and other issues here in the Philippines, but then also regionally and globally. So he'll be able to give us a really, really nice look at all of those kinds of things. I'll lead actually then a panel discussion on those issues to try to get out, to try to draw out from them some of the things that they see going on over the next few years. And then we'll move into
take a break, Steve. Well, let's go take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll carry on with the conversation.
Excellent.
We'll be right back here on Agenda. Okay, welcome back to the program Agenda. With us is Steve Cutler to talk about the Protect Conference, and it will be about safety, security, cyber crimes, the future of digitalization amidst the current threats. Steve, welcome back.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Cito.
Okay, you were about to go into the next introduce or talk about the next speaker after the panel discussion on terrorism or terrorist groups, etc.
Yeah, so we had the kind of the opening keynote that kind of gives an explanation of what the whole uh, conference will be about. And then we move into cyberspace. And I really
Mhm.
think this is a very interesting one. It's called Cyberspace, the New Battleground, that economic warfare is a threat to our national security. And I think that's going to be one of those areas that will be a real eye opener for people because we deal with computers every day, but we don't often see the fact that they're global in nature. Obviously, you and I could email people in Western Europe, in Northern Asia, Southern Asia, whatever, at just the click of a few keys, and we can send information around the world. Well, how do we protect ourselves in a high threat environment? So we have Chief Justice, Philippine Supreme Court Chief Justice Alexander Gizmundo will be talking about some of the things from a legal perspective that we need to take care of and need to pay attention to. And we have a couple of speakers. One will be interesting, Neil Pandya, who is an expert. He'll talk about early signals intelligence, how we can actually start looking forward, collecting information as we have that come into the Philippines via a lot of different cables and so on. What kind of threats, what are we seeing from the outside as far as protecting our critical infrastructure systems? And then Yihao Lim of Mandiant, which is a Google cloud company, will be talking about some of those issues. How do we protect ourselves in a borderless world? We often talk about wanting to protect Filipino information and localization and so on. Is that really possible? How can we do that? How can we protect ourselves? And then I'm very, very pleased to see that Assistant Secretary Jeffrey D. of DICT will talk to us about the National Cybersecurity Plan. And where does that take us? How did that process come about in developing that plan? And where does that take us? Unfortunately, I don't think that's, it's kind of a nuanced plan. It's got a lot of things that are going on in it. And to have Assistant Secretary D actually speak about those issues, I think is going to be very, very important for us as citizens and as people who are working here in the Philippines. That national cybersecurity plan for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years will really set a tone on how we can protect ourselves. Then we'll actually be talking about global crime strategy, data breaches. We have, speaking about data breaches, is Tim Seiner, who is an international expert on these things as well. It's also very, very good. Not only will we be talking about from a very global perspective, big picture, 50,000 foot, but we also have some folks that will be talking to us about getting your program started in your business and how do we protect ourselves in this Internet of Things where our refrigerators are tied to the computer, to the internet, our stoves and our heating and air conditioning systems, our cars, and so on. How do we protect ourselves? How do we, as business people, protect ourselves? Um, it's easy to think, as you leave your home, we lock the doors, we make sure that the windows are secure, and so on. But we also buy good locks for our doors. We try to make sure our doors are in good shape; they don't fall apart, when we close them, and so on. But we don't take the same kind of level of care with our computers, and I'll be talking more about that in just a couple of minutes. But we don't really secure them. We forget that posting things on Facebook or on TikTok or whatever, it's kind of like if we took those same pictures and put them on the wall of our home right next to the sidewalk that anybody in the world can take a look at, or posting them on the walls of a mall that we might visit. It's that blatant and that open, and anybody can take a look at those things. We may think that, for example, if you and I were on friends on Facebook. Oh, I want Cito to see this. I look at this. I just went out to dinner with so and so and so and so. And I'm not thinking about the fact that everyone in the world that has a Facebook account can probably see that information. It's especially critical with our children, with our day-to-day activities. We want people to think about how they're protecting themselves and keeping themselves safe. We'll be talking about security in a post-pandemic world. Ace Esmeralda will be talking about that. He's an excellent speaker. We'll be talking about health threats. I mentioned before about the chemical and biological threats, radiological threats, and so on. We'll be talking about cross-border crime, how we can actually be attacked as we're sitting at our desk in the Philippines, whether it's Pangasinan or Davao or wherever, we can still be attacked. And that's something that we also don't often think about. So we actually have someone from BSP, the Banco Central ng Pilipinas, will be talking about the protections that they're working on with banks and financial institutions to protect us as consumers, and then what we can do as consumers to protect ourselves from financial losses and so on. This worries me because I don't see a need for what I call a Normandy type invasion or an Iwo Jima type invasion in order to cripple this country. What could easily happen is for a cyber attacker who could be thousands of kilometers away from us could still attack us and shut down the banking system, theoretically, shut down the banking system for the entire country, or to shut down our electrical grid and make, significant parts, if not all of the country, go dark. That's going to be a massive problem.
That is a current concern, especially after the Chinese government and their personnel made efforts to invest on the national grid, on putting up facilities in military camps, those cell sites, etc. And it's like, what were they thinking? You're wondering, where are the security experts in this country that you would actually allow the very country you're having a feud with control your distribution line for power or invest in telco? So, I mean, not to impute bad ill will on the part of the Chinese, but security is security. And so you're very right about those concerns.
And those are the kinds of things that we want to try through the Protect conference, that we want to try to spur people to think even more. I like something that you just said. What were the security experts thinking? Well, they're human, just like the rest of us. They can make mistakes. They can make errors of judgment. They may not see everything. And I think that's one of the reasons why with the Protect conference, we're trying to say it's not just the experts. All of us need to be aware of these things and help provide feedback, but also to think about the issues going forward and help provide meaningful feedback, even to senators and our representatives in the House. There's a reason why they're called our representatives, because they're supposed to take what we tell them and make laws and make policy in the IRRs. And if we're not knowledgeable about things ourselves, then it's hard for us to give them advice and to tell them what we want to do. So we just sit back in our easy chair, kind of eating the popcorn and watching the show. And that's not how a democracy, a representative democracy, should work. We need to be involved, and that's what Protect helps us to be able to do. So we'll be talking about. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is a Protect conference a specialist type of event? Meaning, it's only good for cybersecurity experts of corporations or national security personnel, military and government? Because you were mentioning legislators. And not to disparage them, but considering how busy these people can be, I don't think their level of awareness for these global security threats and concerns are on a appreciable level. I think marginal at best is what they know about all of this. Or are you convinced that Protect conference would help them?
I think especially, and I agree with you. It's not to disparage them. They have so many things going on. They're trying to run from one thing to the other and address all of them, and they're not able to kind of sit back and say, "Wait a minute, okay, what does this mean in the long term? I'm taking care of this issue right now, but what does that mean further down the road?" And so, what I'd like to see, if I had my way, would be that they would have their staff who help them to write laws, who help them to research issues, would actually come to Protect for a couple of days and kind of take that time to sit back and well, I started to say sit back and listen, but also to actively engage with the experts that are going to be at Protect in some kind of sidebar discussions. And I want to emphasize that while there will be some kind of technical talk, and so experts can and should attend as well and will learn, but there will also be at the level that all of us could understand what's going on and what's being said. It's not going to require a master's in cybersecurity or electrical engineering to be able to understand what's being said. For example, I talked about Tim Seiner earlier, talking about data breaches and so on. Tim is a very down-to-earth guy. He knows how to explain things so that regular people can understand them. He's incredibly knowledgeable about cybersecurity, but his way of explaining things are so that if we were to sit around drinking a cup of coffee at a coffee shop, all of us could understand exactly what we need to do and where we need to go with it. So I'm very, very excited about these levels of speakers. Rohan, also very easy to get along with. And if you just sit down and chat with him, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. It's like old friends getting together. He doesn't have his nose in the air. He's, like I say, he's written books on textbooks on these issues, but he's not a nose in the air academic that can't relate to real people.
Okay, Steve, let's go for our last break in the program. When we come back, I'd like to pick up from what you were saying on cybersecurity, because not very long ago, Babes Romualdez, the Philippine ambassador to the U.S., uncle of the president, he came out, I believe it was him who came out with the statement based on his U.S. sources that Philippine institutions were at a very high level of risk in terms of cyber attacks.
Yeah.
And as we now see with the Medusa ransomware asking for several $100,000 from PhilHealth, the if is actually begun. And I'd like to pick up on that. But first, we'll go for a quick break. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Welcome back to your program agenda. With us is Steve Cutler. Steve Cutler. He is a security expert, analyst, former FBI agent, and also I believe he's the boss of Guide Meridian, a consultancy firm. I think Steve, welcome back. Was I right? Is Guide Meridian a consultancy firm or a security firm?
It's not a security firm in the sense of providing guard services and so on. It is a Philippine company that is intended to work with groups and other companies to help them improve their security status, but not so much from a physical perspective, but mostly in the cyber arena. So
yeah, I have to thank you for making that clear, because that is my dilemma right now. When I'm talking about security, people still think of the the traditional blue guard, guns and goons type of thing. But now everything is digital, everything is global, and national crimes are happening. So anyway, former, I think he's Emeritus Babes Romualdez, our colleague in the Philippine Star and ambassador to the United States. He said 95% of government facilities are high risk for cyber attack or hacking or some form of cyber attack.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact, we can all talk about the actual percentage, but I think there is a very, very strong need for cyber security improvement. Even with large companies, I think big companies are trying to do some interesting things. BSP within the financial industry is trying to do some things. But across the board, one of the problems that we have with government entities is one is 9481, RA 9481, which is the procurement law, is really good in the sense of when we were buying paper and copy machines or something like that. For computers and cyber, 9481 is, in my view, is outdated because the bids and awards process is so long that by the time you get something done, your computers are out of date, your software is out of date, and so on. And now you're at risk.
Which is what happened with the Department of Education, if I'm not mistaken. They put out a bid for laptops, and by the time the actual procurement took place, the models were phased out.
That's exactly right, and I think that's it's not an easy fix because the actual procurement law would have to be amended and clarified, but there should be some things we can do about it. The other issue is that it gets us into a low bid mentality, and I think that's a mistake also. It'll be interesting to see what happens with PhilHealth and how we can protect ourselves against this type of attack in the future.
We've down to our last 2 minutes, Steve. I'm going to have to do a part 2 with you and your associates after the event. But does the government ask too much information? Because my wife is from the Netherlands, and every time somebody presents a form, she starts, crossing stuff. And I said, why are you crossing? That's privileged information. That's not information that they should be asking about. We don't do that in Europe. Does the government in the Philippines ask too much data, which becomes a security risk?
Well, I'll use an example. When COMELEC, the Commission on Elections, actually had their data breach, one of the things that they asked for was, for example, your mother's maiden name. Well, that's something that banks often ask for as an identity proof. Why does the Commission on Elections need my mother's maiden name? They don't. There are a lot of other information. They might need my date of birth, so that if I was, if I was Cito Beltran, you're Cito Beltran, they can tell which one of us is, which one of us is which. But they don't need a lot of the information that they ask for. They need our address so that they can tell where we're supposed to vote and so on. And I think this is where the Data Privacy Act, which actually the Data Privacy Act in the Philippines, I think is really, really good. And it's patterned after the European Data Privacy Act, or what they call their GDPR. However, it's not well enforced here. And what I think we need to do, and this goes, I love this example because it goes to what we were talking about earlier, that each of us need to stand up and say no, but we need to know just because a government entity asked for something doesn't mean we have to provide it. And so your wife did exactly what I would hope everyone would do, and that is, without being nasty or anything else, just say, you don't need that. You don't need that information for this transaction. You don't need this. You don't need this. We need to know enough and to be able to enforce the law ourselves gently. We don't have to call the P&P. We don't have to call the National Privacy Commission and so on. We just say, no, I'm not going to give you that information, and then report it to the National Privacy Commission so that they can come back and say, no, look, X agency, you don't need that, or X company, you don't need that information. But without us knowing, we can't do it.
Okay, so Steve, it's a deal. After the conference, maybe once you've gathered your notes, you made your discoveries, maybe you and your other associates who are also good speakers, you mentioned instead of coffee, maybe I can have them on the show, because I'd love to bring the level of conversation higher, and for people to understand that security in 2023 and onwards is no longer blue guards and guns and bodyguards. It's now cybersecurity and global threats. Okay, Steve Cutler, thank you very much. I wish all of you at Protect a successful two-day conference, and do hope to see you soon. Thank you. God bless you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Then see you.
Okay, and let's now move to our blessing for the week. Actually, it's a reminder. It's a word of wisdom from Pope John Paul I. It would be wrong to wait and postpone continually. He who takes the road of later ends up on the road of never. Do not turn life into a perpetual waiting room. You might also want to apply that to your cybersecurity, for your security protection. And in the meantime, if you can, catch the Protect conference, and please pray for Team Agenda, and please keep it here on One News.